The chaos in
All right, Bolsonaro supporters stormed the Brazilian capital over claims of a stolen election. Okay, there is an English language thread on this as well. Bolsonarista terrorists have broke down the police barrier and invaded Congress. He invaded the Congress ramp and threatened to occupy the chamber in the Senate. The Minister of Justice, Flavio Dino, announced that he is allowing the use of all federal forces against them. So I take one fucking day off, and the Ameribus in Brazil, the fucking hogs, the Bolsonaristas, who are literally like the exact same fucking piglets that we have here in America, okay, but somehow even fucking dumber, I don't know how. Well, they decided it's time. It's time to fucking storm the halls just like January 6th, just like our very own American hogs did. All right, let's take a look.
In Brazil, a massive riot in the capital over false claims of fraud in a presidential election. Thousands of people stormed the Congress and the offices of the president. Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz starts us off. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, George. The images coming out of Brazil this morning are shockingly similar to the siege on our own Capitol building, with rioters claiming the Brazilian election was stolen. But
shockingly similar because the claims are the same. The people are exactly the same. Their ideology is the same. And also, it too was a fucking idiotic, absolutely nonsensical, like going nowhere ass fucking move. You know what I mean? It doesn't work that way. You can't just like get a bunch of fucking people together who are all like small business owners and shit, okay? And then a bunch of poor people too, but especially like a bunch of fucking small business owners coming together and going, all right, we're taking over the Congress now.
Boggies.
Or whatever the fuck you would, however you would do the Brazilian hog voice. I don't know how to do it. Like, all right, we are taking over Congress. You don't know. And then like they fucking did that. Okay, what's next? Fucking Lula's not there. No politicians are there. They did it on a Sunday, which is even dumber.
Never watched Hasan live.
Okay.
Always delayed.
Meanwhile, motherfucking Bolsonaro is in Florida, in a Florida hospital. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on, but I of course called it. I called that too. What did I tell you? I told you this motherfucker is going to come to America and get sick and experience our no free, no longer has the platinum fucking state sponsored healthcare that he once had. And he's going to have to pay like 30 grand in a shitty fucking Florida hospital. Every time he's about to go to jail, he just pretends to be sick. Dude, it is a goated move, okay? It unironically is a goated fucking move. It's like when you're in like middle school, okay, and you have homework, but you didn't do your homework, so you don't want to go to school because you know there's a quiz later too, and you just pretend to be sick. That's Bolsonaro, bro. Literally like fucking 550 years old and doing the same shit.
Gang.
Dude, how'd you literally call that exactly a week ago? Come on, man. Like calling that Bolsonaro is gonna get hilariously sick is not exactly a big call. Like it just this is what he does, my man. This is what he does. He always does this.
the attacks in Brazil were even more widespread. Overnight, Brazilian authorities retaking control after thousands of rioters stormed several government buildings in Brazil's capital city.
By the way, at this point, this is just like autopilot. Like, America doesn't even need to do a coup anymore because, like, they set up every Latin American country with, like, so many of these, like, weird fascists that they historically have placed in positions of power that, like, America doesn't even need to touch the fascism coup dial for it to, like, try to happen. Obviously, if they don't do it, though, if they don't actually fucking do it on their own, it's basically like this. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be really fucking stupid. But it's not surprising that it happened. You called that J6 would happen in other countries 2 years ago. I literally watched the other video yesterday. I did. And I also have told you time and time again, that no matter what the fuck happens, like, Brazil is always going to copy America. So obviously that is what's going on here. They are literally trying to fucking copy America because their hogs are so similar to our homegrown hogs. Okay. Which is why not only did they storm the fucking, Congress, they also They also filmed themselves doing it.
13 months of brain
They
rot.
also
Love you,
filmed
Has.
themselves
Don't forget to
doing
drink
it
water.
again.
Has.
Like they watched what was going on in January 6th. By the way, if only I was there, I would have fucking done this. Pow! I would have defended Congress single-handedly with the power of anime on my side. Anyway, but they did this. They did the exact same shit. They filmed themselves doing this dumb shit again because hogs are so incredibly hopped up on the greatest drug of all, okay? It's not cocaine. It's not ketamine. It's entitlement, okay? They have a level of entitlement that you will never be able to understand. They're like, what do you mean? Life has always worked for me in the way that it's supposed to. All these systems are supposed to benefit me. And if you think that that is not the case, then you're a fucking asshole. You're wrong. I'll show you. I'll show you that you're wrong. I'll even get violent.
Supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who lost his bid for re-election in October, reaching offices housing the National Congress,
Meritocracy is a
the
lie under
Supreme
capitalism.
Court,
I only work hard to further my personal
and
brain
even
rot.
presidential
This is the way.
offices. The scene looking eerily reminiscent of the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol building after former President Trump's election defeat. Police attempted to repel the rioters, seen here confronting a group on the roof of the National Congress building with weapons drawn. On the ground, officers fired tear gas into the crowd, trying to push them back. The government was not in session, but the demonstrators refusing to accept the election.
Like, this makes it funnier. Like, at least when January 6th happened, like, there was a government in session. Trump was there, and he was, like, goading people into doing something. Like, they weren't even in session. Like, the halls were empty, dog.
Victory of President Lula da Silva, sworn in just days ago. Hours after the protests began, former President Bolsonaro criticizing the protests and saying destruction and invasion of public buildings are not a part of democracy. But Bolsonaro, called the Trump of South America, has repeatedly claimed voter fraud and encouraged a military coup after his loss.
I mean, if you want to understand the entitlement, yes, some cops helped them originally. And not only that, but they were also cheering on the arrival of the military right before getting arrested by them because they thought the military was there to support them. They thought it was like a coup happening because they're fucking idiots. Like, they have no way of comprehending that what they're doing is wrong. It's like a spoiled kid. That's it. It's the same shit. Oh, yeah, this was awesome. I saw this one as well. I mean, dude, come on. Come the fuck on, bro. They had a Brazilian QAnon shaman, bro. That's crazy. I mean, this is like literally just a carbon copy, bro. It's a carbon copy. This is not from the insurrection. Oh, fuck, really? I got fake news. Oh, that's a bummer. This was on a protest from a different day. Oh, really? Oh, I really hope that this guy made it into the fucking fuck. That makes me sad. They want to be us so bad. I mean, it's not an accident that he's doing this. Okay, like this did happen, just not on January 6th. Yeah, they were hitting a horse. They were hitting a policeman on a horse. Like, they were just being fucking crazy. Where is it? Hold on. Here it is. They finally go in and arrest everybody. Earth Baby, thank you for the 25. Get the subs. Bannon was involved with Bolsonaro after all. Fucking loser, dude. He was celebrating it too. And here they are now. Incredible photo taken today at the Federal Police Academy where they are interrogating insurrectionists one by one and drawing up charges for their crimes. Here it is. That's a FEMA death camp, brother. They got him. They fucking owned him. Let's finish this coverage and then I'll get to more details.
Lula surveying the damages in his presidential offices after police cleared the protesters and secured the buildings. At least 400 people have been arrested, according to the Brazilian government.
It's at
There
1,200
remains a
now, I
heavy
think.
police presence in Brazil's capital this morning. President Lula vowing that all the terrorists who did this will be found and punished, and President Biden calling the attacks outrageous. Robin?
Very disturbing scene there in Brazil.
Yeah. Biden is urged, by the way, to extradite Bolsonaro after his supporters stormed the Brazilian government buildings. That's the funniest part about this, okay? The funniest part about this is that, like, Bolsonaro's supporters, the Bolsonarista hogs, just like Donald Trump, okay? They were fucking out there throwing their bodies at a problem that they did not even realize, okay, with goals that they had no fucking, with unimaginably unattainable goals, with a organization that is, with organizational practices that was not going to be enough, with no fucking military support, some federal police support, of course, but like no military support overall. And meanwhile, while they're doing this shit, okay, Bolsonaro is in fucking Florida, sleeping in a minion bed, allegedly, okay, in a UFC fighter's house. He's staying in a Brazilian UFC fighter's house in Brazil. What is this? Everyone at the Brazilian January 6th is going to be named Sócrates Fernandes de Baptista Minotauro Jr. Supermaninho shirts. This was on October 30th, and he did it. I mean, I called this as well. I told you this was going to happen as well. But, like, you know, it's a lock. Like, anything America does, anything the American right wing does, expect the Brazilian right wing to also do the same with the benefit of hindsight. That's the funniest part about this conversation. The most expected thing, of course, is like, yeah, they were going to do January 6th. They're a bunch of fucking idiots. They are the same dumb hogs that we have here, okay? They're stupid. They were expected to do stupid shit. But the funnier part about it is that they should have known better because they saw what happened in January 6th. Like, we're 2 years post January 6th. And they still did it. The minion bed proof? Yeah. It's wild to me that we won't allow asylum seekers in with Title 42, but let the most diseased man on the planet in with no questions. Yeah. Anyway, all while this is happening, Bolsonaro is like browsing through the fucking aisles of Publix, okay, an American institution. He went to like every fucking right-wing fascist's favorite, every Latin American right-wing fascist's like favorite secret hideout, Florida, okay? And he had KFC the day before the insurrection. And while the insurrection in Brazil is happening, I believe he had to go to a hospital for stomach aches again because his stomach hurts. It's just like, you can't write this. If someone were to write this as a comedy bit, I would say it's too on the nose. And yet it happens in the real world, and it happens in the funniest fucking ways possible. Now, of course, the hogs and the hogalinas and the hogalinos, okay, shouts out to Brazil, they did this with the exact same opinions. Like, they used electronic voting machines. They weaponized the Constitution against us. How? Nobody knows. And they basically, they feel just like the American hogs do, that the election was stolen from Bolsonaro.
All right, Martha, thank you.
Steve Bannon is.
And Steve Bannon, of course, is another person who is involved in this. What is this? Explain yourself. Bro, I'm not there. Oh, this is also wonderful. Yeah. during the far right storming of Congress, I guess someone was like selling cotton candy to the people there too. I mean, opportunity, man. That's opportunity. You know, Sigma Grind said, baby, never stop hustling. The hustle never stops. The hustle never stops. I mean, this is the exact same shit like these guys also would sell, Trump t-shirts. Like there is an entire industry of Trump t-shirt salesmen that made a living off of selling the ugliest fucking Trump shirts you've ever seen. Okay, you just gotta respect it. Anyway, so yeah, that's what's going on. Let's take a closer look at Stephen Jebediah Bannon's, takes on the matter.
Strategist who worked in the White House. He has publicly acknowledged that he advised Bolsonaro. This is Bannon back in November as he was pushing the misinformation surrounding this election.
Look in the streets of Brazil. Look at the great patriots in Brazil that at a lot of danger to themselves have come forward and are in the streets of Brazil. This is the people saying, no, you didn't follow the Constitution. You use these machines, you use the judiciary.
It's literally the same. They're using the same lines, dude. Bar for bar. Verbatim. One of the main aspects of why this should happen is the governor of the federal district, the state of the Brasilia, a notorious Bolsonarista, was conniving with the riots and just did some shit when Lula name dropped him on the blame list, firing his security department's leader.
To shut us down in the media, and we're not going to tolerate it. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
And we're seeing how it's playing out now. John Avalon is here to discuss. It is remarkable to see. It wasn't just Steve Bannon who's been advising him. It was also Jason Miller was part of those conversations. He had made several trips. Bolsonaro was actually...
I do not understand why motherfuckers hire Steve Bannon. Like, dude, he's not teaching you anything new, okay? He doesn't have any good ideas. He is like demonstrably a failure. He does not pass basic competency. Like he's not this like conniving, brilliant tactician. The way that like media has like almost made him, almost presented him as, you know what I mean? He's like this shadowy figure in these, behind closed doors, like figuring out how to help people do insurrection successfully. They hire Steve, so he's not the ugliest motherfucker in the room. Yeah.
Actually in Florida right now, we should note. What has stood out to you about the takeaways and the similarities between what happened then, what happened after the election, and now what we're seeing play out?
Of course, the echoes are unmistakable. You've got
It's not even really echoes, right? It's
look, Mark Twain said history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it rhymes. Yeah. But this is a very close rhyme because the people fanning the flames on social media here in the U.S. are some of the sort of the Trumpist wing of that crew who'd been fanning the flames around the Stop the Steal movement very explicitly, not just Steve Bannon, as you say. There has been a move to deny the legitimacy of this election.
Look up any of the old commentary I've done on Brazil, whether it be like Lula's victory or, many times ahead, many times before that. Brazil carbon copies are shit, okay? Yeah, like Bolsonaro could literally personally like something, but if he sees Trump hating on it, he will go and hate on it himself. He had no unique ideas, okay? I guess the only exception was like the one time where he was like, yeah, me and a 14-year-old who I assumed was a sex-trafficked 14-year-old had good vibes and we almost fucked when she invited me back to her house, which is true, by the way. That's a true story. He said he made a story like this up, basically, okay, and embellished the details where he said him and a 14-year-old were fucking flirting. The story isn't true, but he did tell it. Like, some aspects of the story are real, but it's weird that his embellishment of this story featured him kicking game at a 14-year-old and her being receptive to his cunning ways, I guess. He literally explained it as such, which makes it way fucking worse. Like, if you wanted to make up a story, why did you make one up where you were kicking game at a fucking 14-year-old, dude? What the fuck? Who you said you perceived to be a sex trafficking victim. And then these motherfuckers ride for him, dude.
From some of Trump's former advisors saying, do not concede. And here you have this slightly delayed reaction, but a direct attack on the Capitol by a mob. And it just, I think, speaks to the fact that democracy being under assault is not over. And some of the people using social media to encourage these sorts of mob attacks are some of the people who, from the sort of self-styled populist nationalist movement that they seek to make international.
There was a great piece republished this morning in the New York Times from months ago that just walked through the
what is this?
months and years of lies about election fraud
Yes.
that Bolsonaro made and continues to make that led to this, right? That lead to this. And the parallels are just so striking with the months
I don't know what
and
that
years
is.
of
I'm not.
lies that
Don't send me
continue
links
on
like
now.
that.
So I think
I
the
don't know
question
if there's
beyond what we
anything
saw
weird in
happen
there
in
or
Brazil
not.
is those lies from those leaders continue.
That's
So
exactly.
then what?
Well, look, I think it highlights the fact.
Do you know about the raid on the vote count in 2000? Just curious. You mean the Brooks Brothers riot that actually stole an American election? Yes. I have talked about it many, many times. And the people that actually were involved in the Brooks Brothers riot, from Roger Stone all the way to like some of the legal clerks at the time, are now a part of the Supreme Court of the United States. So yes, America has been doing that for a very long time, and they successfully did it. The person who became president, George W. Bush's brother, Jeb Bush, was the governor of Florida at the time. They literally did a riot, stopped a recount from happening, and that's it. And of course, Al Gore conceded to George W. Bush, and Bush became the president. And then did 9/11. All right, let's move on.
There is a struggle between disinformation and democracy, and that disinformation can create real-world impacts. I mean, the role of bots, for example, in Brazil, spreading disinformation, amplifying false messages, but also being done here from the United States by some of the former President Trump's closest advisors. You know, that I think just speaks to the fact that the disinformation flow around the world because of social media is international.
But do you know what this, do you remember, right? Because we lived this.
Yes.
We all lived this. And people would say, why do you guys keep covering January 6th? Why are you trying to divide the country? What are you trying to divide? It's like, no. There was an attack on democracy. This is important. This should be the lead story every single night on every news broadcast until people realize. And then you had all these voices on the conservative side or lack of voices not calling this out or criticizing the news media for reporting on this. This is what happens when you allow authoritarian type behavior from leaders. This is what happens when you allow misinformation when you give it a platform.
No, look, I think that is exactly right, because this is a real-world impact 2 years delayed in another country. And it just shows that this is not academic. Until there's accountability, until we really get better at combating disinformation in a way that's consistent with our liberal values as a democracy, not only here at home, but abroad, I think these sorts of things will continue occurring. And the fact that it's some of the same players spreading the same degrees of election lies and misinformation, having this real-world effect in the Southern Hemisphere, I think should be a wake-up call to us all as Brazil today seeks to reestablish the rule of democracy.
We'll see.
Let's not think about how like Bolsonaro got to this point. Let's not do that. Let's make no mention of like mainstream media's hyping up of Bolsonaro, presenting him as like not a fascist, but actually like a, disruptive figure. Trumpian, but like not in a bad way, but in a good way. Let's not mention America's, early on, America's interest in Brazil. Yeah, all that stuff. This just materialized. Just like here in the United States of America, you know what I mean? Just like the top of the hour ad break, it just materializes. There's no fucking, lead up to it. No, like at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and it doesn't just come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's coming. But of course, lucky for you, there are ways you can avoid it. Okay? You can avoid it by subscribing for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Okay? Or you can get gifted a sub if you're lucky. I wonder how these like right-wing fascist and fascist-aligned motherfuckers who always just love Florida for some weird reason I wonder how they get into positions of power. I wonder what networks they use to blow up their shit. What the fuck, man? You want to criticize journals now for pushing dangerous narratives that could have a ripple effect worldwide because it sets an example despite being an annoying year plus long committee and judiciary process afterwards, which did not deter another country from doing the exact same thing? Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe they just looked at, I guess like they probably looked at America and saw nothing really happen to the jet ski dealership owners and the HVAC owners, you know what I mean? And they were like, fuck it, YOLO, we could do it ourselves too. Politics is corrupt in Brazil across the board. The only difference is, and this has happened in every fucking country. This happened with CHP in Turkey. This happened in the United States of America. You look at the Democratic Party and you realize like, oh, that's the weaker arm of capital, whereas the stronger arm of capital is doing shit that's like openly corrupt, but at least they're honest in their dishonesty. Okay? So there is like a level of power that you associate with those people. And that's it. Lula's scandal or his own personal involvement in the matter in the car wash, in the car wash shit was shown to be false and coordinated by a corrupt prosecutor who was a Bolsonarista himself.
See what Republicans say about this. Democrats want them to weigh in and condemn what's happening in Brazil. One thing I will note also, at 3:45 today, the U.S. ambassador to Brazil is getting sworn in. So she has obviously a full plate. John Avalon, thank you for.
Like, how do you fucking look at a situation? It's literally the Hunter Biden discourse, okay? Sure. And Hunter Biden himself has traded in the Biden name, has utilized nepotism regularly. Got jobs that he's not supposed to. But look at the fucking Trumps. Like, they did the exact same thing in way more meaningful ways, like Jared Kushner especially, when he was in power. You know what I mean? Hunter Biden was never in power. He just got, like, shitty fucking jobs, which is still unacceptable. Right? And an identical parallel exists in Brazil as well, where you look at, like, Lula's corruption, and at most, he turned a blind eye, okay, to misdealings from his own party. But he got fucking ass clapped for it. Meanwhile, not a single person, every single person that says Lula is a corrupt prisoner refuses to recognize that he was acquitted, okay? And refuses to fucking look at a single thing that the Bolsonaro family has done thus far, including the efforts, the many steps that they fucking took to unironically shelter their crimes, to hide their crimes. Why do you think he went to Florida? You think he went there for the KFC? Publix? No, he went there because he knew he was going to get in trouble at the moment that Lula was in power.
Laying out what's really important here, and it has global impacts, as you were saying.
Thank you. This has been top of mind for you for years. So for the last,
I am Brazilian, and you are 1,000% right. People love to say Lula is corrupt and shit, but all proves the corruption was fabricated or bad review by Moro. Yes. At most, Lula's involvement within like the scandals that they literally arrested him for was basically turning a blind eye to the routine corruption that was occurring in every Brazilian administration. That's it. Okay? They said he had personal involvements in the matter. It was fucking bullshit. They literally made all that shit up. And the irony, of course, is that like the prosecutor that did that was a Bolsonarista. And literally Bolsonaro himself has done infinitely worse shit, like personally. Like openly. It's crazy. It's crazy how this kind of propaganda is so successful though, because people don't give a shit. They literally do not care about the follow-ups. There's no follow-up to it whatsoever. That story ended there because it fits your narrative that like Lula is a corrupt socialist. So you just want to fucking believe that. Bolsonaro said a 100-year silence on vaccine card in official presidential meetings, and Lula took it down. The guy flew away the country because he's going to come up with a lot of shit. Yeah, exactly.
Last 2 years. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. This is what it looks like in Brasilia right now. That's where troops are lining up across from those protesters. Again, look at the pictures on your screen. The deadline to clear them now just 4 hours away after this happened yesterday. Those rioters are supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro, stormed and vandalized Brazil's Congress, Supreme Court, and presidential palace on Sunday. Security forces used tear gas to clear protesters and regain control of the buildings. Officials declaring overnight the riots are over. At least 400 people are under arrest this morning. The unrest coming a week after the inauguration of President Lula da Silva, who is vowing to punish those responsible for the attacks. Straight now to CNN's Rafael Romo tracking the developments for us this morning. Rafael, good morning to you. What is the situation in Brazil's capital this morning?
Good morning, Don. Well, it's finally under control, but it looks like a war zone. And allow me to paint the picture of what transpired in the last 24 hours. Imagine for a moment that the January 6th mob here in the United States had not only breached the Capitol, but also the White House and the Supreme Court building. That's exactly what happened in Brazil Sunday, an insurrection that ended with the arrest of at least 400 people, left the main public buildings in the country inoperable, and deepened a political crisis that has been brewing for months. Brazil boiling over. Supporters of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro stormed key buildings in the country's capital Sunday, breaching security barriers and temporarily occupying the country's Congress, presidential palace, and Supreme Court. Masses of protesters flooded the country's seat of power, many dressed in the colors of Brazil's flag, yellow and green, fueled by anger and distrust over Bolsonaro's defeat in a runoff election last October where he lost by less than 2 percentage points to current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Protesters threw
Who's happen all the time in Latin America, and you barely ever see Western liberal media cover the shit, barely at all, especially not condemning it like this. I mean, also, they didn't protect Bolsonaro a second time. Let's be fucking real. If you think that America has no juice left in Brazil, you're crazy. I think their bandwidth and their interests in global politics have shifted away. Literally, it's a multiple parts equation, right? I think partially they don't consider Lula to be like as big as a threat to American hegemonic power. But even if they did, I don't think that they have the bandwidth that they once had. You know what I mean? To like genuinely defend Bolsonaro in Brazil and maintain Bolsonaro in Brazil as the person in power. Yeah, Lula is a far more reliable and predictable leader too. I think so as well. The CIA had to play a role in this. No, man, this shit. No, you know what? It's on autopilot. It's like whenever you fucking see like weird right-wing guys like blow themselves up out of nowhere and then the FBI says, oh, we were aware of this person. It's like that. When you have so many of these like networks set up already, okay, sometimes those networks are going to behave in unpredictable ways because they were set up to do the predictable thing, a right-wing insurrection, right? This is not new for Latin American countries. Okay, it's not. So they didn't have to do anything. I think this is on autopilot. If they actually had to, if they wanted to do something, they would have set up Bolsonaristas within the ranks of the federal government. They would have set up Bolsonaristas within the ranks of the federal police, which already exists. They would have beefed that up. They would have armed certain parts of the fucking. They would have armed certain parts of the Brazilian army. Like, this is not, I don't think this is a thing that happened because the CIA wanted it to happen. I think it's just like they are basically doing the predictable thing because the brain rot is like almost uncontrollable at this point. It's all WhatsApp. Like they're going crazy over it regardless. You know what I mean? These people are fucking insane at this point, just like in America. You know what I mean? It's all WhatsApp. Yes. WhatsApp and Telegram is where a lot of these fucking psychos radicalize, okay? That's where a lot of these people get the fucking psychotic ideas. That's where they organize. There's really nothing you can do about it. Like, and I don't think not everything is CIA brain rot is able to grow on. I don't think this is the CIA. I think that it would be a cleaner operation if it was, and there would be more military involvement if it was. Now, you might speculate on whether it's not the CIA because they don't think Lula is as big as a threat, or Lula's stability to Brazil is something that they find to be beneficial in the global global scheme. You might think that it's because they just don't have enough bandwidth, you know? They don't have enough juice anymore in Latin American countries like they once did. It could be a bunch of those things, but I don't think it is CIA involvement. I think it's just like preset. Yeah, exactly. I knew it wasn't because, look, you want to know why the American State Department wasn't involved in this? because I know what happens when the American State Department is involved in a Latin American country's elections ahead of time. They don't come out and immediately say, we are going to abide by the results, and so should everyone else, of the election before the election is settled. This is ahead of time. You have to understand, like, some of this is organic. Some of this is free-range hogging. You know what I mean? It's Haagen-Dazs, baby. But yeah, look, in the past, when the CIA did facilitate a fucking coup, right? What did they do? Like when they did one in Venezuela, okay? They did a coup d'etat. They helped the coup d'etat happen, okay? And then they turned around and immediately recognized the Chamber of Commerce, like the head of the Chamber of Commerce, as the official president. They unironically kept, until this past week, they unironically said Juan Guaido was the official head of state in Venezuela. Until this past week, when they decided that that's no longer the case. So, like, they're very open about it. Whenever they want to make, or whenever they want to facilitate regime change in the country, they openly state it. It's not like they hide it. There are certain markers that you can look at, certain tells. And they did the exact opposite. They did the exact opposite with Bolsonaro leading up to the elections and immediately after the elections as well. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they're going to help Lula all that much. I don't think they're going to help Lula, but not everything is always the CIA.
Objects and scaled the roofs of buildings while clashing with police who responded with tear gas. At least one protester was seen sitting at the desk of Brazil's Congress president. CNN Brazil reports the floor of the Congress building was flooded after the sprinkler system activated when protesters attempted to set fire to the carpet. By evening, police began dispersing the rioters from buildings and arrested hundreds of people who were detained in buses before being taken to the police station.
Yeah, CIA helped car wash because they wanted our libs to win the PSDP party, but then the far right came in and swept them. Yeah, I think like their involvement happened during the car wash stuff, and then that was, far right does not need Jair Bolsonaro to spread its ideas. Former president was just the face of a movement that will continue operating in the machine of lies that almost re-elected him and then may give power to his successor in the future. It is a story as old as time itself. You have all matter of media that is an arm of the capital defending the interests of big business, okay? Constantly and consistently saying like that even someone who is like who was known as like a conciliatory, known as like a deal maker candidate like Lula, even he was, especially with his like anti-poverty measures, seen as seen as a threat. And once he became a threat, the media is ripping into him. And then you have a little bit of involvement, a little bit of push from our State Department to like undermine his credibility, help with this investigation. Let me up. Thank you for the 69 gifted subs, by the way. And then that it's over.
President Lula da Silva, who was inaugurated just a week ago, described the events as barbaric and vowed to punish the people responsible.
Those people that we call fascists, we call them everything that's abominable in politics. They invaded the government headquarters and they invaded the Congress.
I'll be back in a second.
Vandals, destroying everything in their path.
President Lula da Silva also blamed his predecessor for the lack of security in the capital, where Bolsonaro's supporters have been camped out for over a week. Bolsonaro, who is currently in Florida, denounced what he called the depredations and invasions of public buildings in a tweet, adding that peaceful and lawful demonstrations are part of democracy. But critics say Bolsonaro may have stirred up the crowds by repeatedly saying, without evidence, that he questioned the integrity of the country's electronic voting system.
More details have emerged overnight about how violent some of the pro-Bolsonaro protesters became. Done. At least 12 journalists were attacked, robbed, or had their equipment destroyed. Now back to you.
There's more on the Bolsonaro stuff that I want to talk about, including this brilliant take Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at what's going on while I go pee. This guy, I believe everything he says is correct.
So do you guys have a robust First Amendment like we do in America? Or
Well, it's in the Constitution, but this is what happened. Right now, the Supreme Court says what the Constitution is whatever they want. So the Constitution of Brazil says we have the right of free speech. It's phrased differently, but it's stated like this. Instead of governments shall not infringe the right of free speech, it's saying it's just there as you have people in Brazil have the right of free speech and free press. But since you have a court that can decide whatever is constitutional or not constitutional, and now they're saying that, yeah, it's free speech, but hate speech is not free speech. You heard that before? Hate speech is not free speech. Misinformation is not free speech. You're overstepping your rights and all that. And it's very familiar because the ideology is the same as in the U.S. The only difference is that the U.S. institutions, although they're flawed, they're more robust than Brazilian institutions. So right now you have a dictatorship in Brazil. This is very important for people to know. Brazil is not under the rule of law and democracy anymore. Brazil is not a democracy by any means anymore.
And this is my big argument. I mean, we're against democracies, just so you're clear. And it's a very technical thing. We like.
Yeah, I know. When I'm saying democracy, I'm saying republic.
I'm agreeing with you because democracy, how the neoliberals mean it, will lead to dictatorship. It's chapter 2. It starts with giving everyone the appearance that you vote and you have equality, and then you get someone like Lula, or Luna, I always get it messed up. Lula. Who is a Marxist dictator.
Yeah, he's so right. The GOAT. It's not a coincidence that the Brazilian hogs and the imperial hogs, U.S. and Canada, are using the same tactics, truck blockades, attacking infrastructure. Yeah. He said Luna. My man said, Luna. Stan Luna, by the way, for clear skin. Who was the guy he's talking to? Paulo Figueiredo Filho. I don't know who the fuck this dude is, but there's no shot. There's no shot he's a good dude, okay? He's literally the grandson of a dictator. Oh, nice. He's a political... Oh, the Joem Pan, a Brazilian Fox News guy. Grandson of one of the military dictators who ruled Brazil. Okay, nice. It's always the same, dude. It's always the same. In Latin American countries, like Western media, oftentimes, even Western media that is like supposed to be liberal adjacent or whatever, will end up interviewing like just like Alberto Hitler, okay? And they're like, yeah, what do you have to say about this, Mr. Alberto Hitler? And then the Alberto Hitler guy will be like, my grandfather, he was a very good guy. He was very nice, okay? A lot of people in the woke transgender left say that he did a lot of torture. But, they were wrong, okay? It's enhanced their interrogation. João Baptista de Oliveira de Figueiredo was a Brazilian military leader and politician who was the 30th president of Brazil, the last of the military regime that ruled the country following the 1964 Brazilian coup d'etat. He was the chief of the Secret Service during his term as his predecessor, Ernesto Geisel, who appointed him to the presidency at the end of his own mandate. He continued the process of redemocratization that Geisel had started and sanctioned a law decreeing amnesty for all political crimes during his term. His term was marked by severe economic crisis and growing dissatisfaction with the military rule, culminating in the Diretas Ha protests of 1984, which clamored for direct elections of the presidency, the last of which had taken place 24 years prior. He's business partners with Trump. Here's the two of them together. Let's go. Here's a couple more moments from yesterday's January 6th before we move on. The terrorists invaded the Congress building and tried to force entry into the plenary of the chamber. They fucking broke through the barricades, started beating the shit out of cops, which is pretty funny. Bolsonaro's terrorists are vandalizing government buildings. Windows are being broken. One of the saddest parts about this, by the way, was the fact that like they were able to successfully break through, and then I guess like they destroyed a lot of artwork.
A polícia não conseguiu conter o povo. Não conseguiu conter o povo. Quebraram as janelas, quebraram tudo, entraram dentro da casa. Quebraram tudo, tudo.
According to Andre Janone's ad, Bolsonarista terrorists are carrying guns and trying to invade the federal Supreme Court. They're shooting at the security guards there. Over the past couple of months, we saw several episodes of the police forces showing lenience towards the Bolsonaristas. Now we have footage of them escorting the terrorists into governmental buildings. They're inside the federal. They went into the federal Supreme Court, destroying everything. Whilst terrorists are invading the higher powers of Brazil, police officers are taking pictures and chatting with them, which, by the way, again, ironic, because we saw the exact same thing in January 6th. We saw the exact same thing in January 6th. They filmed themselves because they're fucking entitled, and they literally had cops walk them through most of the steps where cops would literally stop and take photos with them. Okay? That doesn't get a lot of coverage in mainstream liberal media anymore, which is weird to me. You rarely ever hear cops and how they were like taking selfies and shit with the hogs at January 6th. But that happened. We watched it happen on that day, and that shit's not going away, regardless of how little you want to talk about it. Apparently, people are saying that they stole the Brazilian Constitution. I haven't seen it. Okay. An AFP videographer was working on site was assaulted and robbed by Bolsonaristas. They're trying to block the Palace of Planalto ramp, possibly attempting to barricade themselves inside the building. No plans whatsoever, no food, no, like, nothing. Just pure, relentless rage. Okay? They're like, they are the spoiled rich kid on the block who's like, oh, I own the basketball. If you don't want to play with me anymore, you know, if you don't want to play by my rules, I'm taking the ball and I'm leaving. Or if I can't play with these toys, nobody can. I'm breaking it. Bolsonaristas are inside of the House of Senate. Taking photos, taking videos. The terrorists are destroying everything, computers and other equipment. More images of the police officers caught watching the invasion of Congress without showing any resistance. There are other pro-coup insurrection movements happening in Rio and Sao Paulo too. Marcelo Aular is on site and just reported that the forces were able to reclaim the federal Supreme Court building. Yeah, I saw this. This is the video I watched. This is like a fucking cop, a police horse getting beat up. Apparently, one of the Bolsonaristas took a fat shit as well and filmed himself taking a fat shit, like actually defecating in one of the offices, which is, again, perfect. Like, it's just a perfect representation of just like relentless frustration and just a need to like open up and you know, you feel slighted, you feel like the government is supposed to work for you. Okay? The government is not working for you in the ways that it was supposed to. Now what do? You're left with nothing. You're just angry. So what are you going to do? You're going to take a fucking shit on the floor, dude. I mean, look at this tactical ass hog, bro. Look at this guy. This is America, baby. This is the same. We have our homegrown version of this. They took a shit in the Alexandre de Moraes office, the same Supreme Court judge from the elections. Bolsonaristas hate him more than Lula. Yeah, it's like the Mike Pence moment. And apparently, like, Bolsonaro supporters took a bunch of stuff from Congress people's office, including a dildo they said was a sodomy tool.
Tá com a gente, cara. Pediu pra entrar.
Like, what are you doing, man? You look like a CPA. The fuck are you doing? Big homie's just out here filming himself, dude. What the fuck is this? How? This is another, like, Derek Evans is in the Capitol moment right here, okay? Yeah, the dildo apparently, I've heard conflicting reports on the dildo, but the one I do believe is that they actually brought it and then they acted like they found it there.
Eu fui e acompanhei ele até a porta, ele falou, deixa eu só me identificar e mostrar que a gente está com vocês. A gente está do lado do povo. Acabou.
Policial federal, hiper, mega, ultra educado.
Aí, ó. É mole? Será que estamos certos? Brasil!
He's saying the cop led them there. Lula made a speech or a statement on the situation. In his speech, Lula said that those responsible for the terrorist acts will be punished to the fullest extent of the law, and that he will sign a federal security intervention decree for the federal district, Brasilia. Lula criticized the military police from the federal district. I would say that there was incompetence, poor will, or bad faith of the people who take care of the security in the DF. Headline of the Brazilian newspaper, Brasilia police officers abandoned the protection barrier to purchase coconut water while protesters were invading the federal Supreme Court. Oh, surprising. Terrorists arrested for the invasion begin to arrive at the Specialized Crimes Police, and now the terrorists who were arrested for the invasion are beginning to arrive at the Specialized Crimes Police station in Brasilia. It's not shocking, I hope, for anybody that this did not, that this happened in an identical way in Brazil as it did in the United States of America, where, like, down to the fucking cops stepping out of the way or even, showing sympathy to the people. It's not surprising. It happened here. It's the same shit there. Squirrel says, events like today in Brazil just don't randomly happen. They're allowed to happen by police and intelligence services who treat these fascist mobs like tourists who can do whatever they want. These institutions need to be purged from fascist sympathizers. I agree. As noted in the Bolivia coup, the first responsibility of a left movement after taking power is to purge the police, military, intelligence institutions of fascists. These are bastions of fascist reaction waiting to pounce on any opportunity to destroy the left. Just to compare the two, they arrested and imprisoned Lula on bullshit charges, and you know what he did? He turned himself in and told his followers to stand down and wait. They didn't storm centers of power, and if they did, they would have been mass murdered. Absolutely. These disgusting, vile, MAGA fascist, Israel-loving creeps think they own the world. They could do whatever they want. They tried it in Bolivia and ended up getting their shit cooked in. Same in Venezuela and soon in Peru and Brazil as well. To highlight the point about Israel, the apartheid regime funds and trains these fascist movements the world over, including in Latin America and Brazil. It's not an accident that Bolsonaro loves waving Israel flags while Lula supports Palestine. This was less than a week after Corbyn was elected Labour leader. As I said, these institutions are bastions of fascist reaction and need to be purged. British Army could stage mutiny under Corbyn, says senior serving general. And it's always the fucking the press that hypes it up too. I think, like, the press's involvement is, here's how leftists are treated in the same place yesterday in 2016. Oh, this is demonstrations for Temer Brasilia in 2016. Just because we got about 500 meters from Congress, we suffered more than 4 hours of repression. I remember that the the police threw so many gas bombs at us that they even ran out of grenades in Brasilia. Temer surrounded the army because he had no more gas. Look at that. Bolsonaro is not in the hospital, it looks like. Wait, what? I don't know. Hospital de Orlando. I don't know what this is. I can't translate it, so I don't know what it is. Orlando Hospital denies that Bolsonaro is there. Okay, got it. Ben Shapiro has created his own formula to compute governmental legitimacy. Let's see what this is. This fucking nerd.
And the numerator is S plus, and then it's R times A plus I. Okay, so S in this particular equation represents social solidarity. So if you have an area that has a lot of social solidarity.
Dude, this guy, I mean, I cannot imagine someone being a sweatier fucking nerd than this, okay? Oh my Lord, this is like insane. Okay, this is insane. This is fucking crazy. Maybe he's going Glenn Beck style insane though. Like, you know what I mean?
Solidarity, that's going to help the government. Because obviously social solidarity means you're all going to vote in ways that you're not going to offend your neighbor because you like your neighbor and you're not there to use the government to crack down on your neighbor. Plus, responsiveness of the authority to input, that's R, times the avoidability of the authority. So if you know that the government is both responsive to you and also if you're unable to get a response from the government, you're able to avoid the government, right? You can move out of the area. And this also contributes to the legitimacy of the government. I don't have to, if I'm in California and I don't like California, I can leave. That means that the government has a high level of legitimacy. One of the reasons being, even though I disagree with the way that California is governed, I can always take off, which means the people who are left there are consenting to being there. Plus, I, which is the ability of any authority to advance the
What? No, people are not consenting to live in the deep south, for example, okay? Like, they're stuck because they don't have enough money to move. That is crazy. What? I don't even understand. Like, what the fuck is he saying? There's no math in this. He just made up an equation. Math degree here. He's correct. Oh, God, stop.
interest of its population. So, in other words, if government has the following aspects, it is going to have a lot of legitimacy at any level. This, by the way, doesn't just apply to governments. It actually applies to families as well. If there's a lot of social solidarity within the area governed by the government, if that government is responsive to input from people, if you can avoid the government, if the government doesn't rule the way you want to, you can leave. And if the government is very effective at implementing the needs and wants of its citizens, it's going to have a high level of consent. Okay, the denominator. These are the things the government can do to undermine its own authority, essentially.
He's not a math major, though. He's like an English major, you guys. He's not. He is LARPing, okay? Just because he's like neurodivergent coded doesn't mean he automatically is like a math major. He always LARPs as like someone who is a STEM Lord advocate when he has never been a STEM Lord, okay? This motherfucker is like a failed writer, okay? He wanted to, he's an English major. I think he was English or poli-sci. And then he went and you know, got a law degree, okay? And he wrote scripts that were destroyed by everyone in Hollywood. So he decided he has a vengeance against those in Hollywood in positions of power. And, you know, and this is it. This is the outcome.
V is violation of fundamental or pragmatic rights by the authority or destruction of rules and roles by the authority. So the government decides it's going to wipe away civil society. It's going to wipe away your rights. It is now jacked up the levels of control it is using against you. It undermines the legitimacy of the government. R, right? This is R prime. It's the regulatory strictness of the authority. So the authority passes very, very strong regulations.
STEM lords are too easy to fool. Yeah, the reality is, unfortunately, that like STEM lords half don't value social sciences and also are like very easily fooled by like anyone that claims that they have like neutrality in mind and are objective. And well, perhaps there's nothing more objective than a math equation. Obviously, the numbers never lie, right? So this is just like, I think this is basically, it's just basically him fucking tossing this out to capture a couple fucking loose STEM lords.
To move against you. This undermines the legitimacy of the government unless you've consented at a very high level to that government. And finally, the aggressiveness of the enforcement by the authority.
It's like XQC and Paint. No, XQC and Paint can sometimes whip up a fucking work of art, okay? This motherfucker has no idea what he's doing.
People are sharing experiences, and they're sharing basically, listen, this is what you need to do. This is how we're going to make this happen. And this is exactly what we saw. This is a copycat situation. You had January 6th, you have January 8th, and they're trying to export this type of thing around the world. I mean, this is what Bolsonaro is. He's the Trump of the tropics because he embraced everything that Trump is and was, right? He pushed...
The funniest part is I think Trump never really liked him. Like, I don't think Trump ever really liked Bolsonaro like that. He don't know you, little bro. Like, he just,
fascist ideology, pushed, lies, far-right lies, and basically everything that Trump pushed, trying to stir his people up in the streets, trying to push conspiracy theories. Bolsonaro was doing the same thing in the United States. We're talking about the parallels between the U.S. and Brazil run so deep. The same idea of exporting this kind of culture war into Brazil, which, of course, it happened automatically within Brazil, but also the evangelical movement, the connections. And I talk a lot about this, in my podcast, Brazil on Fire, and these really deep connections and how these are being exported abroad on purpose and embraced by Bolsonaro and a far-right imagery. Now, what's concerning here, Amy, and the great difference between January 6th and, of course, this situation, January 8th, is the role of the military and the power of the military historically in Brazil. Of course, the imagery of the dictatorship it was not long ago that Brazil had a 21-year dictatorship. It only ended in 1985. Many of the people who are in the streets just yesterday, they look back to that as a time of great wealth. They enjoyed the dictatorship. There are authorities.
This happened in the Philippines as well with Bong Bong. It's just like misinformation is so powerful, especially in times of like economic instability, that you can turn around and say things were actually so much better when we had stability under a dictatorship, which is unironically exactly what happened in the Philippines as well. It's just like, you can get an entire generation who has never experienced this kind of brutal dictatorship to like get on board with it because they think, oh, well, at least the country was like stable because there's instability right now,
Authoritarian. They want dictatorship, which is something that Bolsonaro's been pushing since he came into office. So it's really important to understand the role that these players are playing, that Trump and Steve Bannon and his allies are playing in the United States, and the great impact that this can have abroad.
Uncertainty drives people to the right. Institutions like right-wing governments make people feel confident in some form of stability. First of all, no. It's not uncertainty that drives people to the right. That volatility already is caused by right-wing established organizations, institutions. Yeah, but the Brazilian dictatorship created 1,000% per month hyperinflation. There was never stability. I don't think it's as powerful here as it was under in the Philippines, but ultimately it doesn't matter. People don't remember that. People just think like, oh, homosexuals are being criminalized and punished in jail for being gay, and I like that. Like, I think they'll throw gay people and people I dislike in jail, so that gives me hope for stability. That will fix the country. Meanwhile, if that were to happen, nothing would be solved, right? Because that's not the problem, right? But it doesn't matter. At that point, it's like, well, I got something I wanted. It's like Trump supporters. Trump supporters under the Trump administration were like, oh man, we're getting everything we want. What did you want, like tax cuts for the extremely wealthy and corporations? Because that's the only thing you got. You didn't get shit else. What happened? Nothing. They don't give a fuck about you. Also, if you want to understand Ben's incredible political analysis, incredible how the American media telescope every single foreign incident to Trump. January 6th, yes, there was historically zero governmental instability in Brazil until Trump. Look, I think liberal media greatly overemphasized January 6th and like how it was the 9/11 it was the real 9/11 of liberalism or whatever. But like, there is a direct January 6th insurrection, carbon copy footprint here. I'm sorry. Like, if you literally look to Brazil and Brazilian right-wing politics and make it seem like it's different than like the American right wing and their actions, you're out of your fucking mind. It's so stupid. Yeah, I heard Lula addressing the nation begins by denouncing fascists, vandals, Nazis, Stalinists. No, not Stalinists, fascists, and criticizing security shortcomings. Everyone involved, he says, will be tracked down and arrested. They filmed their own defecations. Yep. I mean, it was identical. It's identical because it's the same sense of like entitlement that they feel. That's why they behaved in the identical way. Yeah, this is a great take. The Brazilian right wing follows the tail of the reactionary vanguard of the imperial core. That is why they are using the same culture war issues and tactics, truck blockades. Yep.